Well, hello and welcome back to math class. You can see today we're going to move on to something called area and their formulas. We're basically going to be doing something like this. So we did expressions, for example, 3 plus x, right? That's an expression. We have our variable. You can't solve this until I tell you what x equals. If I tell you that x equals 7, well, then you know you're going to substitute in for this x a 7, and you're going to find the answer to be 10. Area formulas are very similar. I'm going to give you a formula, and we're going to substitute a number in for that variable to solve. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first two shapes we're going to look at today are a square and a rectangle. If you would go ahead and draw those on your or in your notes and label them, that would be great. A square, we know, has 4 equal sides. I tried to do my best here. You probably are doing the same. And it also has 4 right angles. So I'll put this kind of here to show I have 4 right angles. A rectangle is very similar to a square in the fact that it has 4 right angles. And it has opposite sides that are parallel. Now, a rectangle could be a square if I would shorten it, but a square can never be a rectangle because a square always has to have 4 equal sides. All right, well, in order to find the area of a square or a rectangle, we have a formula that I'm going to use today to help you solve those problems. The formula that we use is, I like to use the one that's called the area is going to equal the base times the height. I like to use the same one. That way it's easy for me to remember, and I shorten it by saying A equals BH, because we know that the base and the height are touching. We know that that means multiplying. Now, obviously, I can't substitute in for the base or the height unless I know what they stand for. So we're going to label the base is usually the bottom, the base that's setting on both of my shapes, and the height is obviously the side telling me how tall it is. Now, what exactly is area? Well, let's look at something here. Well, area is something like this. Area is what is inside of the shape. Now, if you can see the rectangle that I have here, I have a base right here. And I have a height right here. Now, the formula says we would take the base times the height. Well, how do I know what the base is? Well, I can count it. It is 1, 2, 3 boxes. So my base would be 3. And my height, I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And my height is 10. So I would take 3 times 10 to find out that there is an area of 30. I could always count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I would also get 30. However, multiplying the base times the height is a quicker way for me to find my answer. All right, so go ahead and make a square for me. And if you notice, I made a square, and I labeled this side 9 centimeters. Well, how am I going to find the area? Well, I know that the formula for a square that we're going to use is base times height. Well, the base isn't labeled, and the height is labeled over here. But I know a square is 4 equal sides, so I know that I'm going to be taking the base. I'm going to substitute it in here, and I'm going to put a 9. For the height, I'm going to substitute in a 9, and I'm going to come up with the answer, 81. Well, I have a label over here, and it's going to be centimeters. But in order to put it, I'm actually taking 9 centimeters for my base, and my height happens to be 9 centimeters. So I know that 9 times 9 is 81, and centimeters times centimeters is actually, since there's 2 of them, it's called centimeters squared. So my area of my square is 81 centimeters squared. Now, if you're typing this on a Google Doc, it's hard to do a squared, and so what we would type on our Google Doc is we would type 81 centimeters, and then there's something called, they call it caret. It kind of looks like an arrow pointing up like this, and you would type that, meaning that's going to put the squared, you want an exponent of squared. So this is what we would type on our Google Doc. Well, what would happen if I gave you let's make another square here. And I would say, well, I'm going to tell you that the area of my square is 36 centimeters squared. If I would tell you the area, could you tell me what the base and the height are? Well, I know that the area equals base times height, and I know according to a square that these two numbers have to be exactly the same because a square has to have the same measurement on all four sides. So I have to basically think of what times itself would be 36. Well, most of you know your multiplication facts, and you know that 6 times 6 is 36. So my base is going to be 6 centimeters, and my height is going to be 6 centimeters. So go ahead and get this put in your notes. Sometimes you will see, for a formula of a square, area equals the side squared. The side would be this. We're squaring it because we basically are taking the side times the side. I prefer to use this formula just because that way I know I'm going to use it for the squares and the rectangles and also parallelograms. So it's easy for me just to go ahead and remember this one formula. All right, let's do some more practice. All right, well, as you can see, I made a rectangle and I went ahead and made it sideways. How do I find the area? Well, area of a rectangle and a square is base times height. I'm going to substitute in for the base. Usually if I would turn my paper, we'd think of the base as the bottom, but I know on a rectangle, opposite sides are the same length, so this is going to be 10, and this is going to be 3. So my base is 10, so I'm going to put in here for the base 10, and my height is 3, so my answer is going to be 30, but I have to remember my label, feet, and we're going to remember it's squared. Feet squared, because I'm taking feet times feet, that would be feet squared. Once again, those of you that are typing on a Google Doc, when you're going to do your answer, you're going to type 30 feet. You're going to find this little key that looks like a point up arrow, and your 2. Well, what would happen, though, if I gave you a rectangle, and it looked like this? Go ahead and draw it in your notes. And I said, this is 4 kilometers. And I'm going to tell you that the area of this rectangle is 8 kilometers squared. Can you tell me what the height is going to be? Well, once again, I know the formula is area equals base times height. I know what the base is, so I'm going to put that in here for the B. I don't know what the height is, so I'm going to leave that as an H. But I know that the area is 8. So I bet I can solve this problem. 4 times what is 8? Well, if we wanted to solve like an equation, here's my balance. Opposite of multiply is divide by 4 on this side, divide by 4 on this side. 8 divided by 4 is 2, meaning my height is 2 kilometers. Okay, so we're going to remember base times height for our squares and our rectangles, but I also want you to remember base times height for another shape. The shape we're going to talk about and add to our formula for area equals base times height is a parallelogram. Now, a parallelogram is also a 4-sided shape, and it also has opposite sides parallel, but it doesn't have right angles all the time. So for example, to make a parallelogram, I sometimes like to make a line here, and then I'm going to make a parallel line, but I'm going to start like right there. So I've got some lines, and then I'm going to connect. So let's see if I can connect from here to here and here to here. So I have a parallelogram. Now what's funny is, in order to find the area of a parallelogram, I have to do exactly the same thing, base times height. Well, the base is right here. But the rule about the height is I have to have a right angle. Let's look up here. I had a right angle. Well, I don't have on my parallelogram a right angle. So this diagonal is not my height. I have to find the height. Well, the only way I can find a height is I'm going to have to make a line from here down to here so I can make a right angle. So that means I need to have the measurement from the one parallel line to the other parallel line. That would be called my height. So make sure you put this in your notes. If I would make another parallelogram, okay, let's make another one here. Sometimes you will notice that here's our base. Sometimes heights will be added like this. We're going, remember, from this top line here to this top line. So sometimes people will extend this line like this, and then they'll bring it straight down like this. And then they'll make their right angle here, and they'll call that their height. Once you know what your base is and your height, you can substitute in for your formula. So for example, if I gave you this parallelogram, and I told you that your base is 2 centimeters, and over here we'll make our right angle, and I'm going to tell you that your height is 5 centimeters, you would take your formula, area equals base times height. We would substitute in for the base as 2 centimeters, and our height would be 5 centimeters. We know that 5 times 2 is 10, and centimeters times centimeters would be centimeters squared. Very good. All right, so let's put a little practice here to the formulas that we learned today. We learned the formula for finding the area of a parallelogram, a rectangle, and a square. If you could, please, give me the answers for all 3 of them on your paper, your notebook, wherever you're writing, and let's see how you did. All right, well, we know that the formula for all 3 of these shapes, for make it easy on us, is the area equals base times height. Sometimes you'll hear length times width. It's basically labeling these parts a different thing, but we're going to stick with base times height because that way it's very similar to all of the things we're looking at, and then it'll be easier for us to go into triangles and trapezoids. All right, so let's look at our parallelogram. The formula for a parallelogram we know is area equals base times height. I'm going to substitute 7 in for my base. My height, it looks like, is 3. So I have 7 times 3 is 21. I cannot forget my label, which is inches squared. Even though shapes may be sideways, it's still the same formula. I can always turn the shape and find the base and the height. So my rectangle here, once again, the formula is area equals base times height. My base is 12. My height is 6, so then I have to multiply 12 times 6. Some of you know this already. Do you know it? So I have here the answer, 72. My label is inches squared. And the last one, the square. Just because I didn't label the base doesn't mean I can't figure it out. I know that a square, all 4 sides are equal. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do base times height. I'm going to substitute in for the base as a 3. I'm going to substitute in for my height as a 3, meaning 9 inches squared. On your homework today, I'm going to give you some problems, however, that might look like this. I might give you a problem where I give you the rectangle. I'm going to tell you that the height is 4 centimeters. I don't know what the base is, but I'm going to tell you that the area equals 12 centimeters squared. Can you find out what the base is? Well, once again, I'm going to use my formula. I can substitute in for the area. That's a 12. I can substitute in for the base. Nope, I don't know the base, but I know the height is 4. So I have to figure out what, oh, I put an H there, look at that. I have to figure out what times 4 is 12. Well, I could make it an equation if I wanted to. This is 4 times b. Divide by 4, divide by 4, and I found out that my base equals 3. Most of us could solve that in our head, so my answer would be 3 centimeters. All right, well, good luck on doing your worksheet, and I will see you all tomorrow on learning some new formulas.